Hello, everyone. I'm Chelsea. I'm the host today. Thank you for your coming. And here is good evening. Thank you, friends from all over the world. Today we have a very interesting topic, which is creative crossovers. So according to the central topic, reframe collecting, we rethink the creative cooperation as a dynamic process. Creative strategies of museums collections involve the multiple relationships, including museums and the cooperation, partnership and the collection, of course, and the community. There are more delicate and active interaction in this process. So we wanted to discover how to service our society in such a way, like they feel invited to engage and deepen the meaning of the collections, or we can how we can reframe the way where we work with our collections in order to create new interactions. So here idea is our discussion core. So especially we're reaching out to the outfield outside the museum, such like enhance the social inclusion of the museums. So before we start our presentation today, so here we go. We will introduce our two perfect guests to share their experience of creative crossovers. So the first one is Martin Van Hengel. He's a programmer manager of Van Gogh Connect of the Van Gogh Museum, and he's an expert in urban youth culture and cultural diversity. And the second guest is Vashti DuBois. She's the founder and the executive director of the Color Girl Museums. She's also a theater artist, and the Color Girl Museum is in Philadelphia. This is Monroe Museums honor the stories of the Color Girls. So maybe we take turns to Martin to let us have your presentation. Okay.
Yes, okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you still hear me, Chelsea? Because we had some. Okay, perfect.
Okay, perfect.
First of all, thanks for this great invitation that we can be part of this online session about crossovers. Chelsea, as you just said, I'm Martin. I work at the Van Gogh Museum. I'm running a program called Van Gogh Connect. And in that program, we made, I think, a great connection between art and fashion. And I will tell you more about that. I've prepared a few slides, a few PowerPoint slides, and hopefully, Diane, you will receive my movie. And I would like to close the presentation with that movie. So if not, we can send it to you afterwards. So I'll try to share my screen and also the presentation. Right. Can you see my first? Because I don't see your faces anymore now. But do you see my? It looks perfect. First?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks. All right. So Van Gogh Connect. What I will tell you about it is, okay, what is it about? What is the aim? And what is it has to do with our collaboration with Daily Paper? And Daily Paper is a international clothing line started in Amsterdam, founded by three bicultural young adults in Amsterdam. And especially the fact that they have these bicultural backgrounds was one of the main reasons for me to do this collaboration, actually, because it has to do with the whole research program. So I'll start, as I always do, I start with our mission and our core values, because everything that the museum is doing is related to our mission and values. The mission, you can see it right here, the Van Gogh Museum inspires a diverse audience with the life and work of Vincent van Gogh and his time. And our core values are authentic, in connection, and original. And the three words in bold in our mission, a diverse audience, that's that has a lot to do with Van Gogh Connect. And of course, also our second core value, in connection. The museum did an observation a few years ago about Vincent on Friday. And Vincent on Friday is an evening with, of course, the art that we have in the collection, but it's focused on young adults. It's an evening from 7 to 10 o'clock, in which we have different programs with music, spoken word, dance, etc. So it's a cool evening for young adults. But the observation was that, you know, Amsterdam is one of the most multicultural or diverse cities in the world. But the observation was that it did not reflect our demographics. You know, when we look at young adults, we didn't see a lot of cultural diversity in those or during those Vincent on Fridays, which was strange because we're located in Amsterdam. So how is it possible? Why don't we attract all of those young adults? So that was the main reason to start with Van Gogh Connect. So you can see it on this slide. Van Gogh Connect is a 4-year research program funded by Fonds 21. In English, I think it is Fund 21, a foundation who is financing all kinds of arts and culture projects in the Netherlands. So we work together with a university, the Erasmus University in Rotterdam, and they have this special department or special entity called Impact Center Erasmus. And they are specialized in measuring all kinds of social impact. And with the three parties, the museum, Fund 21, and Impact Center Erasmus, they came up with this research question. And the research question is, how can we be relevant for Amsterdam bicultural young adults? Because we don't see them during those, you know, those special evenings or you know, programming for all Amsterdam young adults. So the questions related to that main questions are, okay, why aren't we reaching them yet? Why aren't they coming? But also a very important one, how do we create internal support? So I work in the office of the museum. We have like 120 colleagues working there. And it's, you know, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, it's important that every colleague or most of the colleagues are, you know, busy with that everyone has the same goals in order to be more inclusive. So that's a very important part of the program. And also, how do we share knowledge about our scientific approach in this particular case? So in the end, we want to deliver a plan to our direction, our directors, I mean, about, okay, how do we find relevance? And we have 4 years of research are we doing, and we are trying to come up with 40 pilots, so 10 pilots per year, in which we find what will work or what is working, I mean, and what is not working in order to be more relevant for bicultural young adults. So that's what the program is about. And what you see here is a pie chart of the demographic 18 to 30 years old in Amsterdam. More than 200,000 people in that demographic, and we focus on because the question is, what do you mean with bicultural young adults? Well, what we mean is in particular young adults with a non-Western migration background. In Amsterdam, we talk about youngsters with a Surinamese, Antilles, Turkish, Moroccan, and you have a lot of other non-Western migration background, but these are the more or less the bigger groups. So yeah, that's like 70,000 young adults in numbers. So that's what is what the target group is about, actually. Okay, so 4-year program. In the first year, we had a lot of discussions, focus groups with people from the target group, and I will just quickly mention 6 of, I think, interesting learnings that we found. Of course, work with role models and use them in your marketing and communication, but also develop all kinds of programming with the target group because they know a lot about the group that they are part of. Also, third point is cultural identification is a very important one. The fourth point is more an HR point, that we need to look at our job profiles in order to make sure that we don't miss all kinds of, bicultural talent that could in the end work at the museum as well. That's the more internal part of the program. The fifth point is that making a link between Van Gogh's life story and the personal development of the target group is a good thing to do. We see that making this link, really adds up to finding that relevance. And the sixth point is very interesting, that we notice that, when you look at bicultural with or without a, when you look at students and MBO students, that's, MBO is really a Dutch term. It's more the vocational kind of educations. When you look at those students with or without the migration background, you see different kinds of preference. We saw that bicultural students with this particular educational background, that they prefer cultural participation. So like dancing or making stuff. But that's only limited to, this specific educational level. Because we saw, when you look at, for instance, the scientific educations, the difference was smaller, or wasn't that clear. So that's something about the learning. So with these learnings, we decided to come up with 4 strategies. So we came up with this matrix or chart or model, and what you see is activities that we do in the museum and also outside the museum. And on the left side, you can see all the things we do in a more formal setting, and with formal I mean within education hours, or the lessons during school, and informal is what you do outside school. So then you have like 4 areas, and the T0 is a measurement before an activity. So the Erasmus Center or the Impact Center Erasmus has all kinds of questionnaires, and the youngsters fill the questionnaires before an activity and also after an activity, and that's the T1. So then you have like a comparison between all these activities in the middle. So I'll tell you something about a program for students, an MBO program, but also about daily paper, to make you more aware of, to explain how this really works. So in short, this is the vocational study about or the pilot with vocational students. And we used, I was talking about cultural identification, and we used youngsters or workshop masters for this particular pilot, and they gave the workshops to the students. And we find that by using them and also using the story of Vincent, it really helps to share personal stories, but also that you can share your emotions. And they also felt more home in the museum, and also they really liked it, and they knew their classmates in a more personal way. So based on these findings, we decided that this specific kind of workshop with spoken word, with art, we decided to make it part of our educational offerings, and it's called now Your Story, My Story. And it's all based on this on a measurement before and after this specific pilot. These are reframers, in Dutch the beeldbrekers, and all with a bicultural background. And that is because in the research program we want to gain a lot of insights from them. In September we will start with a new group, but that new group will be a perfect mixture of the pie chart that I just showed you. So all ethnicities, also with a Dutch background, for instance, will be part of the reframers in next year, and they help us out with the network, but also ideas for programming. Right now they have an exhibition in the museum as well, in which they share their perspectives on the collection. So that's also a cool thing that we have them in our surroundings. Daily Paper and Gogh Museum is also one of the 40 pilots that we are doing in the program. Yeah, I contacted Hussein Suleiman, who is one of the founders, and I said to him, "Hey, I'm working at the museum, and it would be great if you could work together because you are, yeah, a very big role model, a well-known role model in Amsterdam. So can we do something to make sure that young people see how Van Gogh inspires you as a person or as an entrepreneur?" And he said, "Okay, that's a good idea. Let's do that. But let's go a step further. Let's also make this clothing line. Well, actually, let's make 2 clothing lines and see how we can combine art and fashion." So that's what we did in 2020, 2019 as well. And this is the result, really kind of wearable art, in which different people, artists, but also on the right you can see Jamal with the Daily Paper shirt. He's one of the reframers, bill breakers in our group. You can see him on this picture on the right in the corner. You can see him over there. That's Jamal. And you know, we also did a documentary about the collaboration. I will send you the link later, or I can share it in the chat. And we had a lot of press attention. I'll show you a slide later about it. But you know, the great thing behind this collaboration was also the impact measurement. Because of this, we also saw that it really helps to work with a partner like Daily Paper to be more inclusive, or to show youngsters that the museum can be relevant to them. Because what we did, again, we did that measurement before and after an event, and the event was a launching event in which we presented the clothing line to hundreds of visitors on the 14th of February. And the conclusion was that, you can see it right here, that respondents became more positive about the museum and about the relevance to them and the museum. They were also more positive about the, that's a strange term, maybe the inviting image and the open image, but it has to do with hospitality. Do you feel at home in the museum? And we saw that because of the partnership, they felt more at home. And they experienced a greater sense of freedom in the museum than they initially had, and feel that the museum after the event is much more hospitable to them than before. Sorry. So we saw that this partnership really was working in order to be more relevant. Also, the 4th point is interesting, and that's a more remarkable point, that after the event, it turned out that they had felt less at ease on the event night than they had initially expected. So that's a bit strange. That's something that we find that's part of research as well, that you see that's, you know, you also find things that, you know, really are remarkable. And we will actually also publish a scientific paper about this collaboration with Daily Paper, and that's also part of the research program to share knowledge with the art and culture industry. These are 2 jackets or 2 clothing pieces. Again, you see how, for instance, the potato eaters on the left, is a part of this great jacket for the winter. And the core message was, with this collaboration, Daily Paper and the museum are investigating how fashion and art can bring people from different backgrounds together in order to learn from each other. And that is very important, because we know in all kinds of research in the Netherlands that especially bicultural or young adults with a non-Western migration background, that they feel less part of the Dutch society. It has to do with discrimination as well. And the museum really wants to, with the Gogh Connect, wants to investigate how they can make sure that people feel more included in the Netherlands as well. Because that's, I think, that could be a role of museums, in society, to be more than a museum, or to be more than a place where you can find art, but you also have, that's my personal opinion, a more a social function. So in the marketing and communication, we had different goals to tell the story about the collaboration with the target group. And it was really about diversity and inclusion, and we had a lot of positive feedback because of the collaboration. And also you can see that in this overview of the press attention or media attention for the collaboration, from Forbes, of course, to Phonics, which is a radio broadcasting radio organization, very well known in Amsterdam. And we really saw that a lot of people find it a great combination of art and fashion. So this is a 2-minute video of Hussein, but when I press on play, it will not work. And now I will press on the escape button, and I'll see you guys again. And I'll ask Diana if it's possible to share the video with you, but I'm not sure if it will work. And if it will not work, we can maybe send it afterwards.
Yeah, I'm very sorry, Martijn. I suppose it's actually an error in the email. I haven't received anything yet.
Oh, that's strange. Well, doesn't matter. The message was in the video was that he really liked the collaboration. He was happy with it, and it really helped him out as well for their brand. And it was just a positive message, Diana. So that's that's it. So that's actually my part of the presentation. I try to explain how we, try to find out how it became more relevant for this specific target group, and how we try to do that with a collaboration with a fashion brand, Daily Paper. So I hope it was clear, and if you have questions or afterwards, I would love to, and I will try to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Martin. It's very inspirational presentation, and we can find the Van Gogh museums use the very different models to invite different community and express the museum's mission or their care, their social inclusion. And the last, the case about fashion and art is a wearable artwork. I think it's very closer to audience, and I very like it. And very thank you. And we leave the question maybe after the Vashti's presentation, and I think it's more conclusion about it. And Darren, may I to have the video about Vashti, and then the Vashti we can go further. Okay, it's the Color Museums, Color Girl Museums artwork. I think it's artwork already, and there maybe I don't talk too much, but maybe people just see, and then we have the Vashti presentation. Okay, shall we? Thank you.
Vashti, maybe you want to introduce the video first before I start.
Hello, everybody. My name is Vashti DuBois. I'm the founder and the executive director of the Colored Girls Museum. And what you're going to see first before I begin talking is a video which is related, it's an installation which is related to the current show, which is actually off-site because the Colored Girls Museum is at present closed because of COVID. I will say this by way of introduction. The Colored Girls Museum is a memoir museum. We are in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in America. And we celebrate the ordinary, extraordinary colored girl through the submission of her art and artifact into this museum. The museum itself is in an ordinary house in an ordinary neighborhood. So you're not going to walk down the street and have an idea about what this particular house is holding, which is consistent with how we think about what a museum should do and how a museum can be, and who a museum is for. And we come to this conversation with an idea that folks can, approach this question of what some are calling radical inclusion from the inside out or from the outside in. And we prefer it from the inside out. So we begin with our end in mind, and I'll talk a little bit more about that after you see this video. And it's a pleasure to be here today, Martin. That was fantastic.
Thanks, Vashti. So I'm sharing the video. You tell me when I need to stop, okay? Is it working all good?
Put a spell on you because you're mine. You better stop the things you do. I ain't lying. I ain't lying. You know I can't stand it. You're running around. You know better, daddy. Can't stand it. 'Cause you're putting me down. I put a spell on you because you're mine, mine, mine. right now. Yours right now. Ooh, oh. I'm gonna spell on you because you're mine. I love you. 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 You ain't got to want me, 'cause I want you, and I'm yours right now. I'm yours right now. Gonna make you mine. Gonna make you mine. Mine, mine. I, you mine. I put a spell on you. Ooh.
Thank you all. You know, growing up, my mom had a saying which typically didn't mean anything good at the time, but is relevant here. She used to say, and many of us probably know this in some form or another, uh, I can show you better than I can tell you. And so I really wanted the Colored Girls Museum to present this video as an entry into this conversation about how do we expand and extend the social impact of museums. And, in this year of, 2020 coming into 2021, we're having multiple conversations about museum impact, about diversity, about radical inclusion, all of these things. And I think that these are vital conversations to be having. These were vital conversations to be having before. I'm not entirely satisfied that I personally understand what it is about this moment that has made, museums, um, such a focus of this conversation. I have theories, but I don't fully understand. It's significant to say as well that my background is as a theater artist. I was trained as an actress. I became a director, and I have worked in the field of social justice and social service and arts education for well over 30 years, in a variety of different roles. And I believe in the power of art in all of its forms and art making to be truly transformational. I have said that if I weren't an artist, I might have been a politician, um, or maybe a minister. Um, but what I love about art is that uh, it brings you into a conversation at the level that you can come into a conversation at. So I don't have to convince you of anything. My work as an artist is to create an environment in which I open up your head and I open up your heart. I also believe in the power and the necessity of collaboration. And obviously, if you are a collaborator, anybody here who's a theater artist knows that the first thing we know about theater is that there is no way in hell you can do theater by yourself. Theater requires an army of folks to help you produce an idea and an event. But obviously, as we think about museums, we're also thinking about these singular events because visual artists can actually work alone. At the Colored Girls Museum, the curator for the Colored Girls Museum is a ceramic artist and a painter. But the associate director and I are both coming with other performing art backgrounds. And so, what we're curious about is what that intersection um, offers. The Colored Girls Museum did not start as an event which was attempting to break into any other system. We started as a story, as a moment, as an event that was very self-interested. We were interested in celebrating the ordinary, extraordinary colored girl through the submission of art and artifact into a space. We were interested in centering the stories and experiences of Black women and girls. Because what we all know from our collectively, our 90 years of experience of work is that so often you can have the best intentions for telling multiple stories and bringing diversity and all of these things. But if the starting point is absolutely the same, then you're not likely to get any place different. Therefore, built into the DNA of the Colored Girls Museum is a completely different perspective. That perspective is held by our persistence that Black women and girls are at the center of the story that we're telling. And that when you tell her story, that when you focus on her story, you are telling everybody else's story because the ordinary colored girl is at the bottom of most things. And what happens when you're at the bottom is that you hold a radical perspective because your survival actually depends on it. So if you don't know her story, you don't know your own story. So our offer is know her story. So we don't have a challenge around, who comes to this museum because we started where we wanted to be. So ordinary Black women and girls come to this museum. And then other people come to this museum, I think in part because they're curious about why ordinary Black girls come to this museum. The other thing is that it breaks out of this box of what a museum should look like, who a museum should be for. So museums, in our view, should belong to and reflect the interest and the concerns of the community. Museums should be able to do social work. Museums should be able to um, invite people in and hold stories that are of concern to its citizens. And so the way that the Colored Girls Museum structures herself is in our very first show, the Colored Girls Museum opened for business. Um, the backstory of us opening our doors was related to some of what was going on in the world at the time, which is that um, she was disguised. The house takes on a persona, and you've probably all heard me refer to this museum as a she. She is personified. So her first persona was as a bed and breakfast. And the reason that we did that was that we were thinking about how, like, what her impact might be on communities that felt that Black girls should not have a museum. And so for her safety, for the safety of the actual building, and the works therein, she becomes something else so that you will not harm her. So that was the first show. The second show, we really looked at, it was called A Good Night's Sleep, and we looked at the impact of sleep disparities on our communities, specifically on the bodies the health and the mind of ordinary Black women and girls. And the backstory for that was that the ordinary Black women and girls have been dealing with 400 years of sleeplessness, and the exhibitions in the museum were the elixir that the ordinary colored girl was charged to gather in order that we all might get a good night's sleep. And so each of the rooms in this museum then transformed into sleep chambers for that show. The third show, Urgent Care, this museum became a hospital. A hospital because we thought, well, ordinary Black women and girls need to have a hospital, not because they're sick, but because they actually know what they need in order to survive anything. What knowledges do we already have? And all of these things are actually done through the submission of art and artifact from ordinary Black women and girls in the community. So you don't have to be the most fabulous artist. You don't have to be trained. We say here we put the cure back in curation. So we're really also looking at curation itself as a healing practice and as a radically inclusive opportunity. We're looking at collections themselves as curative, like that the Colored Girls Museum doesn't, the video that you just saw, those portraits are actually the first intentional collections that the museum is beginning to build, because we actually prioritize people over collections. And those of you who are responsible collections know exactly what I mean. Once you start a collection, then you also become responsible for maintaining it, and your concern about its maintenance can overtake everything else. So you can't do some of the interesting radical work that you need to do because it's expensive to maintain a collection. So you have to prioritize it. So here, we're really, really, really intentional about what we bring in. This particular show that we're in right now, which is First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, is the Colored Girls Museum's love letter to ordinary Black girls. We're focusing on that system because we're thinking very specifically, again, the museum moves towards concerns that the community is having. And so we know that in this pandemic, girls around the world are being uh, are being impacted in ways that many people won't feel the fallout from until years from now. We obviously specifically have a concern that this is happening to Black girls in this country. And so what we're able to do with this exhibition is elevate that conversation and bring people to it from a variety of different ways. So again, I guess what I want to emphasize, what's really important to emphasize, is that I think we have to be doing many, many things at the same time when we're thinking about inclusion, when we're thinking about social impact, when we're thinking about building audiences. But a thing that we should always be doing in the view of the Colored Girls Museum is investing resources and time in allowing other folks to do their own thing. Because if you really want to change the landscape, then you have to open up the doors, right? You have to have the potential to partner with people who will benefit from the partnership in a real and sustainable way, rather than consistently offering opportunities for people to come into institutions that are already well established, that are already well funded, that are already well endowed, and that hold a perspective, because what's in our DNA reproduces itself. So we have to be honest about that. And the only way to create other ways of seeing and being is to allow folks to do what they do. And I say allow, but again, I acknowledge that the Colored Girls Museum didn't ask anybody for anything. We were self-funded. We were a volunteer-led crew. We started with 3 folks in leadership, myself, Ian Friday, Michael Clemens, and we recently brought on the director of education as well. And so there's some sacrifice when you want to do it yourself. I hope that we can be an example of what is possible when folks are able to just do it and do it at a level that they can come do it at a level that they can sustain. We're now at a point in our development where folks are asking, well, what about getting a bigger space? What about doing this? What about doing that? And I think that the thing that we all agree on is that we don't want to take on more than we can carry, right? Because as demonstrated by that first video, which is a small facet of the exhibition that now sits outside of the museum is closed, but was also in our DNA was an understanding early on in our inception that that all the colored girls in the world were not going to be able to come to the Colored Girls Museum. And even if they could, we couldn't fit them because we're a small house. So how could the Colored Girls Museum always have her attention on how do we reach folks around the world? So the museum itself was designed to travel. That is to say, we understood early on that the Colored Girls Museum could take over any space and transform that space into an outpost of the Colored Girls Museum by working with the indigenous colored girls in that space. So we would not be bringing Philadelphia to Australia. We would be looking for the Black girls in Australia. We would not be bringing the Colored Girls Museum and her holdings to Detroit. We're going to Detroit and working with the folks in Detroit. So again, built into our DNA is our understanding that the expertise already exists in the places, that what we can offer is a framework from which the work can move forward. And so finally, in the communication we received, there was some conversation about the immersive tech grant that we received, which is actually the very first grant that the Colored Girls Museum received from the Knight Foundation to imagine the Colored Girls Museum in an immersive tech space. Now, in 2017, we were already trying to figure out how can we do a virtual event of the Colored Girls Museum so that people can visit the museum online in the browser, right? Because there are headsets and there are all these other things, but we knew that most people would not have access to those things. So we wanted it to be as accessible as possible. What this grant offered the possibility for was building that technology while also thinking about how the museum itself could become an immersive tech theater almost, so that for those folks who did come, you were able to like engage in you were able to walk in the ordinary colored girl's shoes because of how we were going to be using technology in the space. But then, as you all know, a pandemic that none of us expected landed. And that meant that last year, this time, for the Colored Girls Museum, the last of the portraits that you just saw arrived at the museum on the day that Philadelphia went into lockdown. So for 9 months, those girls' portraits sat in a studio before they were moved upstairs and hung, then taken down and framed. And the girls who were the muses for those portraits did not see themselves installed as we had promised until almost a full year later. And now they are seeing themselves fully presented at Slot, and I believe that Ian put that information in the chat. They're seeing themselves fully represented in that space outside of the Colored Girls Museum for the first time. This exhibition is the first exhibition that the Colored Girls Museum has created that is designed to leave home. And this was not an easy thing to do because you see that they are girls. They are our girls. So represented there are the girls who are from 9 to 18 years of age. But I had the great privilege of like stewarding these girls for a year because they couldn't go anywhere and nobody could come see them. And now they are away from this home for the first time. But this is the beginning of their trip around the country, collecting other colored girl portraits as they move. Because
excuse me,
yeah,
Vashti, sorry, maybe we have the time limit.
Okay, all right. So
Okay,
that's it.
sorry, but it's very
Okay,
inspirational.
no. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Okay,
That's
we can
it.
talk more
Yep.
after the questions. Yes,
Okay.
I
All
think
right.
there are
That's it.
so many questions from our participants. Yes, maybe Martin is Martin. Yes, maybe it's. I think there are so many common about the creative crossovers. So maybe can you reflect some your ideas, or and Vashti, and you also reflect some ideas about the work or projects with each other. Maybe can bring some ideas to our participants.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, maybe Martin go first, or it's okay.
Excuse me, Chelsea. So, can you repeat the question one more time?
Yes, we want to maybe you can share your ideas about the Vashti's work or projects, the Carol Girl Museum. What can they do, or they can have some concept between your idea of your work. So we have some reflection about it. Thank you.
Yeah. No, Mr. DuBois, you had a great sentence that really, a very important sentence in your in the whole story, and it was that you need to give people space to do their own thing, right? By the way, I'll try to put on gallery view so I can see your face. I think that's, I think that's a very, so give people the space to do their own thing. That's what you said, and I think that's a. When I look at my work at the Gogh Museum, I try to do that with the Reframers, you know, but all other groups as well, because the museum is, I don't want to say it's closed, but it's this big institution, and with a lot of know-how, knowledge, expertise on, you know, Van Gogh. But the museum wants to be more in connection with society. I definitely agree that the museum can be more than just a beautiful building with beautiful stuff in it. And if the reframers can do their own thing, what they're doing more as we, you know, grow and as we work with them, that's so important, because first of all, a lot of bicultural young adults, the cultural industry here in the Netherlands is it feels far from them. It doesn't feel close. There's like a gap. If you know what I mean, and giving them more, access, responsibility, room, space, in brainstorms, in what they can add in the group, you know, and making their insights more valuable in the group for the museum. That's I think it's, when we talk about social impact, that's I think a great example of social impact, because, and then that's I think a great example. Joat, he's one of the reframers. He said to me, we were driving, we were going to a theater, and he gave me, he was bringing me back home, and he was saying in the car, Martin, because of the fact that I am a reframer, and I'm in touch with, I'm in contact with your colleagues and the museum, I have more self-confidence. So it gives me more self-confidence to be part of, you know, in this whole museum area setting outside of the museum. So let people do their own thing, and give them space, and also make them valuable in the museum. It's very essential in their daily lives, you know, outside of the museum. So yeah, what you just said, that was for me was a perfect fit in what you were doing with the because of that. I really the fact that young girls collect stories from other girls is so beautiful. And I think, again, Ms. DuBois, it's that's the whole thing. That's the basis. I think people need to do their own thing. Yeah, that's, I think, is the essential message that I like about your story. Yeah, I'm not a native English speaker, so I'm really struggling for a word sometimes. But I hope it makes sense what I'm saying. Yeah.
All the sense.
Yes.
All the sense.
Yes. So maybe Ms. Vashti, do you want to express some ideas?
So I mean, so Martin, I'm looking at your work, and it's extraordinary, right? The work of young people is extraordinary, and and again, like I said, the world should see the work because the work is extraordinary. But I also think about wow, like how fabulous it would be, for your young people to have their own, to not be the reframers, but to be the framers themselves, right? Because one of the things that is lost, well, one of the things that gets slowed down when you, because there's an amount of convincing that we're doing to be in spaces where people are
Yeah.
learning how to be with us, right? And so that takes energy away from us. It takes energy away from our young people. And the most important loss is the time lost on imagination. Because when young people just are not fighting to figure out if they're allowed, if they can fit in, if we're not, then we are free to just like make whatever it is we want to make. We can just, the mind does what it wants to do because it's not also arguing with whether or not it's okay. So my you know my love of what you have been able to do with your young folks is just it's extraordinary because I know what the circumstances are. I know what it takes to sort of carry a young person over the place where they're like, well, this doesn't really have anything to do with me. And I think about like how much more you and all of your young people would be able to create in the world if you came to that space and brought your stuff. But if you had your own lab where you could just let the imagination do what it does. But it is like, it's exquisite work. And I also just love the idea of like fashion coming out of this information, like in these partnerships. That's beautiful. So thank you for
Thank
that.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. So time is running so fast. So we open to the participants. Maybe anyone has your questions to our two guests. So we can propose to it. Anyone? Okay, Daniela, please. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your great presentations. The work of Martin already a little bit longer, but Vashti, I only got to learn the great work of your team just recently, and I'm truly inspired. I had a question. I read an interview because we were talking about the immersive, and you were saying that to reach beyond the comfort of display cases, to relate to the concerns of ordinary citizens, diverse communities, and to create varied opportunities for education and engagement, new technologies is important to remove many of the barriers that keep people out of institution. Can you elaborate a little bit more? Because I think that really fits with reframing how we think about collecting and museum work.
Sure. Well, one of the things, and Martin's work is an exquisite example of that. When just this technology that we're in right now allows us to be able to bring the work out of the boxes that it exists in terms of the specific spaces, right? And so as we think more about how we might use AI, in a positive way, augmented reality, virtual reality, what happens is that we're able to expand the impact of experiences, like I said. So if you're using augmented reality and you're able to like make a space like this immersive theater, people have a very specific experience when they come in. If you're able to move your work and have it powerfully presented in virtual space online, you're able to remove the fourth wall that is often a barrier for folks who are thinking about museum going, because you can create an on-ramp that allows folks to feel like they can engage with the space before they walk into the space, right? And the technology also allows you to engage. I mean, a lot of the museum, going that we do, it's static, right? Things are behind glass walls and whatever. So you can't, there's a particular experience that gets constructed around how you get to relate. The technology takes that away. It moves it aside, and the visitor, the guest, can actually, before ever walking through physical doors, can have what feels like a really authentic experience with collections and with museums and their storytelling.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And a question from Ida and the Miss Martin. They have the chat bar, so we have the question. Since you focus on the topic of representation, how is the representation in the museum staff? He said it's a problem. I think in many museums in Sweden, that people working in them, and mostly are white and middle class person with a similar experience, would be interested to hear about what it's like where you work in the church.
Yeah. Well, in the museum, I think it's similar as compared to Sweden right now. When I started 2017, we did a questionnaire with all the colleagues, and we asked them about how they felt in the museum. It was a questionnaire about diversity and inclusion, and we also asked them to mention their or list their ethnicity. And we saw that indeed majority were the white Dutch background, and but it was dependent on the departments. For instance, the security department was very mixed in terms of cultural diversity. But the office side, the office jobs, was not the reflection of the city. So in 2018 and 19, it became more diverse, but we're not there yet in the sense that we are this perfect reflection of the city of Amsterdam. No. In the culture industry in the Netherlands, you have like the 4 P's of we talk about Danielle, you know them, of course, the 4 P's of diversity and inclusion, the P of partners, personnel, people, personnel, program, exactly, and public. Well, from those 4 P's, the P of personnel is the most difficult part, and it has a lot of reasons. So yeah, going back to the question, it's still something that we have to do a lot of work to or in. We're trying to do that again with the reframers, but also look differently to our job descriptions and etc. and talent programs, etc. But yeah, it's more difficult to be an inclusive from the inside than to attract different visitors. That's my experience. So I hope that is an answer to the question. We're not there yet. Yeah.
Thank you. So anyone has questions? Actually, may I have? Okay, please, Elizabeth. Thank you.
It's not a question. I would just make a comment because I was fascinated. I have to thank you both for this presentation, because I think that for all the people who are engaged with ecom, they should really tell to the representative of ecom with their definition of museum to listen to these two, Martin and Vashti, because between the two presentations, there are so many definitions that you did give about museums that I never heard of. And so I was I hope you should inspire them. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I got a question. Oh, anyone? Okay. If you know, I have a question. If we imagine further, what's the future or the trend for creative crossovers? We make easier access and more imaginations, more empowerment. What can we do more about it? So I want to ask 2 guests about these further questions. Thank you.
You go.
Anyone want to be the first one?
I know, Martin, I keep doing that to you, right? So how can you be, that question of like how you can be more, I think about just as a personal thing, how exhausting it is to kind of like be asking your own self, like, how can I be a better person, right? Which assumes has the standpoint that like you're not already a better person. That said, I feel like both Martin and I have answered that question in so many. We've offered a number of different answers, and so I'm happy to just say again, like, there is what we are doing, and understanding the, like, how limited that is, and like how it's just not that much fun for anybody. Like, when you really, like, it's like when you look over the fence and see people doing other things, and you say to yourself, well, damn, like, I want to learn from that too. I want to do that too. So there is, yes, like, like, working on hospitality issues, working on diversifying staff, working on diversifying guests, but if we want to move beyond this moment of sort of political correctness and outrage to something that's truly transformational, then I think we want to work on those things, but we really want to put our attention on who and how are people just like redefining the whole concept of the museum, right? And release it, right? And support those movements that are going in a completely different direction. To me, that is if we want to do crossover, let's do some crossover, right? It's and both, because I know a lot of folks who I hold near and dear are working in these difficult spaces, and we benefit from that. quite frankly, we do, because we offer another way of, like, thinking, seeing, and being that then can be taken back into these spaces. But we also we ground we ground some of our colleagues in a different way so that they can survive in those spaces, because I have to underscore how difficult it is to constantly be arguing for your value in spaces that say they value you, but don't want to give up any ownership. So, and obviously I decided I didn't want to have that conversation. We decided we didn't want to have that conversation. So we did our own thing. But not everybody can do that. Yes. Or wants to.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe,
maybe I can just, because I think that is a big difference, and that's also interesting in having the two stories from Martin and from Collard, where the Van Gogh has to face his historical self, and Gogh coming from that point. And Vashti, I think in your case, and also the organization I'm working with, which was built up bottom up, in a sense, which I start to also find to become more and more a difficult word. What is bottom up and what is top down?
Right.
Because that means that you put people on the bottom and people on the top, which should not be the case. But I think if you start to say, I take control of my own and I start my own institution, you have to control, and therefore, in Martin's case, he has to work within a framework which is highly problematic, and has to defend basically his position, as I see it, constantly to make a change. And I think that is something that we should not forget if we think about the changes of the museum that should be made, or maybe museums, and we should end calling it museums, and it should be something different. But there's still a long road to go. But I want to thank you both for bringing in your inspiration, because it's needed. Like Elizabeth is also saying, this is also needed to bring new insights to the discussions about what a museum should be. It's definitions that we created ourselves, and we can also change it ourselves, but only if we step up and make the change, I think.
Totally agree, Daniela. If I can comment, I think definitions like language, these are all dynamic things, so they change over time. And yeah, I think it's time to come up with a new definition. When you see the impact of museums, and I've seen it in my work, then it's more than just a collection. It's more than that. And I think the value of a museum can be more, can be stronger when you see the impact that it can have on people. So we need to I prefer a new definition.
Thank you. So it's sorry, there's no questions. Okay, because it's almost the time limit. Time goes around so fast. We can see the museum reach wider audience to organize small activities. Museum social role of the cultural institutions in supporting inclusion became more prominent. The museum continue to turn what we experience around into a new understanding of what museums are. So this core concept is what CAMCO will discuss this annual conference. So very thank you for Martin and Vashti. So very inspirational and strong and very powerful concept and ideas to creative crossovers. Thank you for your contribution for museums, for audience, and for the social we live in. And so we have the last session about Reframe collecting in April 22. If you have interesting, please join us in April. So today is a very nice webinar with you all over the world. Thank you for this. So maybe we can see you next time. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And Diane, maybe good to mention that the presentations will be shown on the community of We Are Museums. It's a community space which is free for everybody, but you have to register, Diane, and then you can see this back, and also you can add more information to it. We have been sharing a lot of links. We will also share that back on the We Are Museums community site in connection to these projects that were shown today. And thank you so much for your time and attention.